And then once this is just loading up, I'll hit record, and then our panelists are set to everyone coming in. Perfect. Maybe I'll go silent now that the recording is on.
Yeah, yeah, right. That robotic voice is pretty disconcerting, huh? I don't think I've ever heard that before.
I know. Now it asks for your consent to be recorded too. It's getting pretty high tech here.
Wow, compliance.
I know. Yeah, she always comes in and it kind of spooks me a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, they could use something a little more friendly, right?
Yeah, there's something more welcoming. I don't know.
Right. I think maybe we should call and you know, your voice should be the recording for Facebook Voice. That would be much better.
Or Alexa.
I'll get a job behind the scenes instead of on camera.
Exactly. I wonder what that's worth.
Yeah, I always think about the like the Alexa voice or even Siri. I wonder how much that those people get paid. I bet it's a good amount. I mean, everyone has.
I'd imagine a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there was a whole Seinfeld episode on this.
Seinfeld we go.
There would be if it was still on.
Perfect.
There was an article recently I saw about the woman whose voice was used for Alexa.
No
She
kidding.
was an Amazon employee, I think. And
Senior Vice President of Voice Relations.
yeah, I don't know. I started reading it and then got sidetracked because look, a squirrel.
Yeah, I saw one video of, I think it was TikTok. There's like the automated voices you can use as like the sounds for people's videos. And I saw one article how they had used the Siri voice. It was like a bunch of controversy over it, like the rights of it and stuff, but I haven't looked up too much into it. It's intriguing. Imagine getting the phone call, hey, we need to use your voice. That'd be awesome.
I wonder how much money was spent on, you know, selecting the process for selecting the voice.
I know it.
How many marketing team employees, you know, how many meetings? It's probably quite a few.
Like they can synthesize pretty much any kind of voice these days. So it's like, I don't know why just tweak it any way you want, make it sound like anybody you want.
There are some apps you can download for your Amazon devices. I encourage you to go and look up the Samuel L. Jackson one.
Oh yeah.
It's wonderful, but it's
Colorful.
not kid friendly.
Yeah. We just saw him in a movie recently, the Hitman's Bodyguard with Ryan Reynolds.
Nice. They're
Yeah,
still
I don't
making
think
movies.
that's kid friendly
Don't
either.
make movies. No, it's not. It's just you can always count on him to use certain phrases.
It's the best. So I mean, you have to, with the apps for that device, you have to be very specific, right? So you can't just say the Amazon keyword.
Right.
You have to say, ask Samuel.
Yep. Yeah, there's a bunch of you can download outgoing voicemail greetings and stuff, all kinds of people.
All right. I know some more people will trickle in, but I say we get this webinar started.
Okay.
All right. Good morning, everyone. It's 11 o'clock. When we get started. Thank you for joining us, all of the attendees and our Facebook friends. This is being recorded. Briefly, I'd like to just start with explaining the Mass MEP, what we're about, and what we do. We are part of the National MEP Network Manufacturing Extension Partnership Network. There are 51 centers across the country. one in each state, one in Puerto Rico. And we are all funded either wholly or partially by NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology. Mass MEP works on 3 major platforms. The first one being workforce development. We can help build and empower your workforce with training on problem solving, leadership training, idea systems, standard work, job instructions, job methods, visual management, and many more. The second being operational excellence. We can help solve operational issues like substandard quality, late delivery, inefficiencies, low profitability with our organizational management solutions. And the third one is innovative growth strategies. We can help you gain competitive advantage, long-term profitability with growth and innovation through corporate strategic planning, value assessment, marketing and sales systems, and project management. One of the additional things that we do is cybersecurity, how we can help you learn and set up your cybersecurity process to aid you in gaining DoD contracts and military contracts going forward. With us today is Emma Mailman. Emma is a marketing coordinator with Mass MEP, and Richard Sullivan. Richard is a program development manager with Mass MEP. Rich will be our point of contact for this. So he will reach out to you folks, the attendees later on, to see if we've done a good job and how we can help you going forward. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Emma.
Wonderful. Thanks, Mike. So good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Mass MEP Cybersecurity and CMMC Weapons Against Cyberattacks webinar. Our panelists, who we like to call our cybersecurity whisperers, which you can tell from the shirts that they're wearing. From Synagex, we have Pete Morin and John Sinopoli. And from Cybersaint, we have Derek Bauer. Mike, obviously, who just spoke from Mass MEP, is our program development manager. Later on, he will go into more depth on the subject matter, as well as how this content does connect to the services we offer, as well as the funding that's available to all of you to be a part of for some of the trainings that we all do together in the future. But as Mike said, I'm obviously Emma Mailman, marketing coordinator. I'll be the moderator for this webinar. I want to thank you all for joining us this morning. As you can see, we are in a webinar format, so all of your mics are muted, but there are plenty of ways for you guys to engage with us throughout this, through the Q&A section and the chat option on that bottom panel in your Zoom window. We encourage you guys to use those to chat amongst yourselves, as well as chat to us. This will be an area you guys can use for a variety of things, like sharing questions, thoughts, and ideas with us. The Q&A, again, is also open. We'll be actively answering questions throughout this webinar. We do have an hour set aside for this today, as we feel that's plenty of time for the content and the Q&A. And just to be respectful to our panelists and for you guys' time, if we do begin to run over, we will end the webinar as scheduled, but we will address your questions through the email addresses that you guys have provided to us. This webinar is also being streamed on the Mass MEP Facebook Live channel and will be available on our Facebook page after the webinar concludes. If you feel someone would benefit from this information, but unfortunately wasn't able to attend, you can gear them and direct them towards the Mass MEP Facebook page, and under our videos tab, you will find this live stream. So without further ado, let's begin the Cybersecurity and CMMC Weapons Against Cyberattacks webinar and send it over to John, Pete, and Derek. So to start, I feel as if, the most beneficial thing to learn would be the process, because obviously there is a process in place that's in place for the issues that you guys are consistently seeing. So I was just wondering, what the process is in general, and are there different processes based on size of business? So obviously smaller businesses, I feel would have maybe a more difficult time just because they have less resources. So are there different things you do for them versus larger companies, or, what does the process entail?
Who wants to take that one? Process is too boring for me. I need more exciting topics.
You got to start with the boring ones, and then people are interested in the end.
I think when we talk about cybersecurity and working with different size organizations, there is a difference in approach. To some degree. The methods, right? The ways to deal with this, are similar, but I think it's the most important thing is to right size this stuff, right, for our clients. That's something we at Synagex really pay a lot of attention to. But as far as process is concerned, I think Pete or Derek, you guys are probably better suited to speak to sort of how that looks.
You want it, Peter, or you want me to take it?
I'll let you take a swing at it first, Eric.
All right. So basically to start, a little bit about our solution. Our CyberStrong platform is essentially where you're going to be doing all of this workflow. So basically going through that baseline assessment and filling out that gap analysis, which, John and Pete will actually work through with you. I'll let them get to, how they're going to be working with you in a little bit here. But basically in our solution, we're going to be running up against these standards and going through these controls within the platform and actually going through and checking these boxes and saying, are we doing this or do we need to do this? And what's going to really respond to that is giving you your cyber posture score. So basically kind of your grade, essentially, how you guys are mapping up against that certain framework, and if your standards and procedures are actually matching up to, building out that better cyber practice all around. Essentially, what the biggest thing you need to do to start off with this is to, really gather, that information together and say, hey, this is where we need to start and this is where we need to get going. Regarding the workflow, I can hand it over to John and Pete and they can kind of describe, how they actually go through that process with you in a little bit more detail. But just think of our solution as basically, your kind of homepage and your center to actually, get through these questions and actually go through this workflow.
So Pete, before we dive into that, I think, I know not everybody has been able to join. Well, I'm guessing we don't have folks that subscribe to our webinars every time, though I'd love it. We could probably put this on Netflix, right? I'm assuming there'd be a ton of interest in cybersecurity. People love it as much as we do. I think I just want to bring up, like in the past, we've talked a little bit about cybersecurity and about, sort of different layers of protection and how to protect your organization. I think we use this very friendly, colorful rainbow to kind of depict, how this looks. And while that, may resonate to some, between that last webinar and now, Pete and I have done much more homework on military terminology. Actually, after our last webinar, a friend of mine, hopefully he's listening, reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, hey, John, this stuff you're doing, super cool. You got to check out this book, right? And the book was called The Kill Chain. It sounds pretty nasty, right? But I don't know, to some folks, maybe a little bit more interesting than the big rainbow that we show. Really what this is about, we talk about the kill chain, it's military terminology and sort of how to engage with potential enemies or targets, right? And the simple of it is, and I'm going to butcher this, apologies to everybody who's actually in the military and lives by this terminology. But it's about, sort of a methodology to find, right, to identify and how to engage, right? So the idea here is that, combat is not about, sorry, got a little echo there. Right, to identify, combat is not about, sorry, got a little echo there, right, to identify, combat is not about.
Glitch in the matrix.
Yeah, holy moly. I was like, is somebody talking or is that me?
And it's you. 3 times.
There we go. I think it's all set now.
All right, got it, cool.
IT skills are coming in handy here.
Good job, Emma. So just to sort of circle back on that, right? It's about finding, identifying, engaging an enemy. And in a lot of ways, it also is like, right, how we are working with cybersecurity. As a matter of fact, I think Lockheed Martin has even adopted this methodology and expanded upon it and is starting to build some cybersecurity terminology or engagement lingo around it. So as we're thinking about the reason for all this, as we're thinking about how we're working with small businesses, large businesses, there's a lot of relationship in sort of how we deal with it, right? It's not a big wall approach, right? It's a methodology and sort of how we identify and contain and disrupt potential attackers, right? We don't want them to close the kill chain, right? There's a defense methodology and sort of how we are combating this sort of stuff. So identifying some of these risks, right, within our environment with Cybersaint and Cyberstrong is a great place to start and identify potential points of weakness. And then Pete can kind of walk through some other things that we do in there, that kind of follows this kill chain methodology.
Yeah, absolutely. When I started reading the book, John had mentioned it, and I took a look at it, and the kill chain, or even part of that breaking the chain, but it builds nicely into the NIST framework, and that's, as we mentioned earlier, NIST is developing some of the standards that we're talking about. So they're behind the CMMC framework. They're the reason we're here. We're out completing these assessments in the field. When I go into these assessments, an important thing to note is I generally get asked, okay, why are we doing this? And yes, there's that DoD requirement to get this in place, and then the process of the NIST to follow that chain through. But more importantly, that we're all under attack right now, and that we should all be stepping up, from a small business to the larger businesses, to take cybersecurity seriously. In our last call, we talked about the Colonial pipeline, and since that point, I just wanted to kind of refresh on what has happened since that last call. We were right in the midst of it. I think our last webinar was the week after the Colonial pipeline, so we were kind of hashing out what actually happened and what's going on. Since that time, the TSA, who controls the pipeline, they put in security guidelines that are very similar to what the CMMC requirements are for those pipelines. So that group of organizations is going to go through the same kind of thing that the manufacturers here in Massachusetts were helping with, the CMMC assessments. That's all built off of that NIST framework as well. And then a little bit of that framework. So what does it break out in? When we talked about the kill chain, they're talking about understanding, deciding, and acting. So the NIST framework then goes into, like, how are you going to approach this? And it's about identifying what our objective is, protecting it, detecting. So we'll talk about some of the tools that we're going to put in place to detect. So detect cybersecurity risk in your organization, how you're going to respond to that. So that's a big one. And then if you are compromised, how you're going to recover from it. So it's a big loop, and goes back to what John and I have talked about from that kind of pyramid approach, but now kind of circular, moving through that process.
Right. So I mean, we can talk about this stuff for days, right? We love it, and I know that can be really confusing to folks who aren't as involved with technology or understand all the acronyms. I think the simple way, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but the simple way to sort of think about this is you need to have a strategy, right? You need to have a plan for this stuff, and to do that, you have to identify those things. Obviously, you need to have a tool set or a partner, right? Someone who you trust, that can help you decipher all of this stuff, and you need to stay on it, right? If I'm going to sort of boil it all down from a process perspective, all of these frameworks, all of these tools, all of this kill chain methodology, if you think about it, it's really just about having a plan, understanding, what the threat is, understanding what sort of tools are available to you and resources, and having a plan against it and staying on top of it. That's really kind of the biggest thing when it comes to cybersecurity is it's technology, right? It's evolving continuously. So how do you fight an enemy that's constantly evolving, right? It's with a plan. It's with layers. It's with people that can help you identify and sort of build a defense, and hopefully someday something that's more of an offense, right, against these sorts of threats.
I think
So what
one
are some
analogy,
ways?
if I can
Oh, go ahead,
for
Rick.
one
I'm
sec.
sorry.
A lot of our clients, pretty much all of our clients, are very familiar with the continuous improvement mantra. And you can't just fix your operation and then move on to something else. It's got to be constant. You have to look at every process and figure out how you can do that process better. And once you figure out how to do it better, you figure out an even better way. And I think the cybersecurity, the maturity model portion of this requires that companies are on top of their cybersecurity on a regular basis. And
Exactly.
it's not, you can't just check off a box and say, okay, I get that, I'm all set for the rest of my life. It's just not going to happen. And our superpower is we bring in the experts, and we offer this as a training program, because you're in there instructing the clients on how to do this on an ongoing basis, so that they can take care of themselves and keep it up. Beyond that, they're every customer is a snowflake when it comes to their environment, right? So you have to go in there and figure out exactly what applies to them and what doesn't apply to them. And the standard, whether it's 800.171 or the CMMC standard, which is 15% bigger than 800.171, is basically an instruction manual on how to do that. And really, it's between you guys and the customer, you can figure out what fits.
Yeah, manufacturing right now, I mean, it's amazing when we're working with clients, sort of the level of detail and intricacy and compliance and quality and just the simple running of the business, right? I mean, sales, creating a part, getting it out the door. There's so much that goes into that. And when we walk in and we start talking about cybersecurity and compliance, you can almost see, in the faces of these business owners, the pain, right? It's like, I have so much that's happening right now. You mentioned that snowflake. I mean, it just feels to me like this is like it's like a second snowflake that comes in, right? And it's this whole complicated thing that now I have to deal with. And it is very personal, right? Not only with the families and tenured employees that are working in these companies, but just in sort of how to earn trust, right? And to engage with customers, to help them with something that they've put so much effort into, it to me, right, and to us at Synagex, it's a huge part of why we love working with Mass MEP and Cyberstrong and Cybersaint and these clients, because we really take a lot of satisfaction out of walking into these environments, getting to know people, getting to understand what they're struggling with, and just take this whole confusing snowflake of cybersecurity and really start to educate, build a plan together, and start to sort of change that dynamic as we're sort of thinking about how to approach CMMC compliance. It's a big part of who we are. We really enjoy that piece.
So once you guys are working with outside companies, you do gain that trust and you build on that relationship. Can you give us a real world example of a way that you have kind of disrupted the process of a cyber attack? Are you allowed to do that? I'm not sure.
I don't know if we have a great one, actually. Yeah, I mean, Pete will give you the ins and outs, but this one is great. Awesome story. So we have a local to Western Massachusetts manufacturer that we work with. Definitely won't name names, but we'd gotten a phone call about a potential issue, right? And this phone call went like this, right? We get this random number that comes in, and it's Johnny O'Reilly from Boston, right? I work for the FBI. One of your clients has an issue, right? And we're like, okay, yeah, right, okay, right. And we're giving Johnny a hard time on the phone, right? Because part of what we need to do is identify the threat. 9 times out of 10, when we get phone calls like that, you can imagine, I'm sure the folks listening, get these all the time. It's okay, Johnny. Well, where are you from? What's your phone number? Like, what did you eat last night? Right? And we're giving them a hard time. And Johnny's just assuring us, like, no, mister, like, I work for the FBI. Like, one of your customers has an issue. And then, fast forward, we call the 800 number for the FBI. We go in through the main tree, we go through the whole thing. And we land on Johnny's desk, and it's like, oh, Johnny, I'm sorry, you really do work for the FBI. My bad. But the actual attack was pretty interesting, and it ties to, I don't know if folks have listened to podcasts or a lot of news about cybersecurity. It ties to an actual threat that was, I believe, the Chinese. We identified that the Chinese had sort of targeted small manufacturing and exploited a risk that Microsoft had, right? So it's a very big deal. And while we had done everything we could to sort of defend against these things, right? Patching, locking things down, there are times when even the biggest of institutions and most secure institutions have vulnerabilities, and there's a time window of exposure that needs to be managed. The end of this, the client was fine, but the story was kind of cool, right? So Pete, can you tell us a little bit about what happened there?
Sure. And as John mentioned, some of you may have heard about this Exchange patch because it was released earlier this year in March. So at the beginning of March, so preceding this call, we receive a notice that we get from Microsoft that says, hey, if you have Exchange servers, there's a known vulnerability, patch your Exchange servers. This is probably a week before we receive this call. So we go through our process and we patch that server. Think nothing of it. We've done our steps, ensured that system's secure now, and then move forward a week and we get this phone call. And enough of the phone call sounded like they knew some of the details about this organization, but not a lot. So yeah, what are we going to do? We're going to at least follow through, like John said, and not just take him for his word. And that's something we want to teach all of our customers too, and employees, that be cautious, always be cautious about it. Like, you may want to jump right in, like, this is legitimate and I want to give this guy more data, but be safe. So we did that and
treat him like a telemarketer, right?
Yeah.
Just keep him on the phone for 24 hours. You punk, you bothered me.
So then what we find out is the FBI did have a small piece of data about this organization that was taken through this vulnerability in Microsoft Exchange server. In the end, all it allowed them was to see some small pieces about the Exchange server, like the name of the Exchange server, and it wasn't enough that they could continue in. We had patched in time. The other security measures we had kept the system safe, but it was, if you heard, I think it was a week or two ago, that it was actually China that was hacking US systems, and they knew about this. They discovered this vulnerability in Exchange in January of this year. So there's always this large gap between the time that someone out on the internet, a hacker, has identified the weakness and started to take advantage of that vulnerability. So they had like a 3-month window that they were, I think the number was 30,000 Exchange servers around the world were touched by this. So the FBI got involved to start. This is the first time ever that they started reaching out directly to organizations to say, hey, you may have been part of this hack. So when in the end, talking to them, that's what they wanted us to know the most, is that you may have been compromised. This is what happened. Please look into it to ensure that they didn't get in any farther. They didn't have lateral spread throughout the organization and get more data. That lateral spread, like, that's one of the things we'll talk about with tool sets, is once, if they could get past that firewall or that Exchange server and into the organization, what starts to happen and how do we defend it once they're within the company. But again, just to back up a little, that this was the first time in history that we know of that China has hired hackers to basically attack organizations directly involved in the DoD supply chain.
And that's really what the Kill Chain book is kind of all about, right? For anybody that goes out and reads it, it's about, sort of national defense and how, how the United States is a bit behind the curve when it comes to thinking about modern warfare, right? I don't want to get too deep, but essentially, right, if you think about this kill chain and identifying and detection and containment, it's a lot about information and communication, right? And really, this book is kind of focusing on how countries like China and Russia have spent a great deal of time disrupting or building, weaponizing, right, technology to disrupt that part of our kill chain, the communication methodology, right? And parts of this show up in commercial hack news, like Colonial Pipeline, like this example we're talking about in small business, right? It's a very real world example of how something so big can touch somebody so small and have an impact, right? And I know we run into this stuff all over the place, commercial, whether it's related to the Department of Defense or not. Just thinking about what you do every day in your business, and how if it were disrupted and companies like you were disrupted, how that information or that disruption can impact the greater United States. That is the future of warfare, and I don't even know if we can call it the future anymore. It's happening. It's happening.
Like ransomware.
Yeah.
John,
And a lot of
And
companies,
especially, I think, coming out of COVID, since everything, we were forced to put everything
Go
on
virtual.
technology. So down to
Right.
the Zoom we're having right now, not being able to
Right.
be in each other's offices and having things virtual. We're
A lot-
reliant now more than ever, I think, on technology.
Exactly, and a lot of companies also think, oh, I'm too small for any hacker to care about. I'm insignificant, so I don't see any major Chinese player trying to get into my system or whatever. But what they don't realize is it's not people sitting at a computer targeting individual companies necessarily. They have these software bots that go out and look for vulnerabilities. And once they find those vulnerabilities, they send a report back to the hackers and say, hey, here are these servers that are easy to break into. And a lot of the attacks are automated too. So it's not it's more opportunistic, I think, than targeted.
Yeah, you're right. And it can be little bits of information. Fortunately, our client here didn't have any sensitive information that was captured, right? But there is some data there that's useful, right? I think when we talk about hacks, you're right. A lot of folks will think, sort of single point of entry, did one thing, and the way that this typically works, or that we're seeing on a bigger scale, is we're collecting data and then we're correlating data, right? And planning a second attack, maybe not directly to this organization or even in the same way, but there's value in this data. If I get one piece of information that I can then tie to another, that gets me in a different way. It's a little daunting in that way, right? And there are folks out there that are continuously working on this, right? They're as passionate about hacking as we are is about stopping them, right? And there is, a lot of machine acceleration that's happening there so the pace of threat is moving very quickly. Just to sort of come back to this example, one of the ways that we can help sort of deal with that situation, and Pete was touching on, is with architecture, right? We are IT resources, and there are ways to construct layers within your IT environment. In this case, we have an email server. The email server has to talk to the internet. It can't work otherwise, right? So to some degree, we have some risk. We're out there. But as IT professionals, right, there are secure ways where we can isolate the usage and exposure of that server to the internet so that it only is allowed to do what it's supposed to do. We can put rules on that server so that even if someone was able to sort of get in through this very skinny channel, they're only allowed to do certain levels of things. And that's what we saw here, right? That Microsoft had a vulnerability. We were able to get into this very tiny channel, but once we were in, couldn't do anything, right? It was only this very teeny bit and if that wasn't in place, if this company didn't have a trusted partner that understood how to architect that situation, you can imagine, right? That Pete talked about lateral spread. If they were allowed to go into other systems in the environment, it could have been much, much worse. So just sort of bringing it back, we're IT people. We're going to get a little geeky. Hopefully that was some color that wasn't too detailed, but it's important to have a trusted partner who understands that, right? And really gets, what layers of defense and how do we need to interact with this stuff? How should it be designed? Having a partner that understands that is going to be very important. We don't know how to make anything. We don't know how to manufacture anything, right? What we do is very specialized, just like our customers are very specialized in what we do. And it's important to have those partnerships, to get things done in the right way.
Yeah, I think it's funny how at the beginning we joke about, people maybe not being as interested in cybersecurity as you guys, but genuinely, I think since coming out of COVID, I think that there's more and more attention that's being brought to it. So as I said earlier, obviously we're all, kind of leaning on technology right now. But I would say like down to the little steps, like for myself, I just moved out of a house to an apartment. And the first thing that some of my friends told me to do was to get my own Wi-Fi router because it works for the whole complex. So they were like, oh, well, if you're doing work if you're working from home and someone kind of, I don't know the terminology, so forgive me for my ignorance on it, but hacks into the Wi-Fi, then they potentially could have access to all of your work stuff. So that was the first thing that I, was brought to the attention to when moving out was you got to get your own Wi-Fi router. And that's one of the things, I think, down to the smallest things, people are, gauging more interest in cybersecurity and, cyber warfare, as we call it, because there's a lot of people, I think, that are vulnerable, not being used to having this much, lean on technology as we do nowadays. So I think one of the things that I'm interested in knowing is, are you guys seeing trends? Like, is there things that are popping up more and more frequently that you guys, are having to deal with or that you're hearing more frequently out there?
I mean, I think for me personally, it just kind of just hit off of what you said with the Wi-Fi. Just to build off what people are just getting more realization into it. A lot of things nowadays are just kind of trying to prepare you for that too. So I know sometimes for like my work email, there's a setting, just you have to change your password every 3 to 6 months. For maybe some manufacturers, I've told this story before in another webinar. I walked into this is pre-COVID and everything, but I walked into a warehouse one day of a customer we were working with, and I just walked right through the door. Door was unlocked, no buzzing, no signing, nothing like that. There was about 20 to 30 people in there in the warehouse, and no one approached me, anything like that. So the way you kind of look at it is it's as simple as changing your password, as simple as locking a door. You don't want to give anyone just kind of that free access. I mean, anything like that, or give them the opportunity to. I could have just walked right in there, just walked up, acted like I own the place. No one's going to ask me any questions. There's a lot of things that, especially since we've gone more internet friendly with COVID and everything, it's, there's a lot of signs out there that are going to, point you towards the right direction, such as passwords or, making sure that, you're on a secure network or anything like that with the Wi-Fi, like you just mentioned. The world's kind of changing in that direction, but it's a good thing. And, obviously, John mentioned it before, everything's going to keep evolving. So there's going to be new ways to actually, access this information. But, it's definitely good that people are kind of waking up to more of a realization as to, how easy it really is for something like this to happen.
And I'll touch on one that's like, from what Derek has talked about, it's one of the least glamorous of our tool set, but one of the most effective is the security awareness training for your employees. So just staff awareness, self-awareness of what you're doing, even catching something as simple as Derek wandering through an unlocked door. If the staff is trained and to be more alert and aware, even that, the physical being in the building, they're going to be on a little bit more aware of and call attention to it. But then, like we used with the example, just with our own organization, the FBI calls, being aware, like, is this legitimate? take some steps, evaluate it, analyze it. But then when it comes to your own email and these ransomware and phishing attempts, that you're being a little more cautious, but taking the time to train your staff and repeatedly train, like refresh, so that that stays fresh and you're on top of that.
I got bit by that
Maybe don't
yesterday.
harass the FBI agent.
Yeah. Why not? That's
He
just
was
fun.
cool about it.
Yeah. Yesterday, so we use this system ourselves. It's called KnowBefore, right? For those of you that are interested, it's a great tool. We just include it as part of our engagement packages. It's not something that we sell separately typically, right? We're a bit more result focused, but we use it on ourselves, right? And we have this thing turned up super far, right? Meaning, go ahead, try to fool me. And yesterday I got one. It was someone replied to you on Twitter, right? And we have a social media presence. And I actually, you know, I'm admitting this in front of everybody. I actually hovered over it, half clicked it, and then went, oh, oh, wait a minute. And our tool gives us some feedback, right? So I reported it to the tool and it said, hey, congratulations, you found out you didn't get fooled. But man, I was like this close. And that's a big trend. You know, you're seeing more evolved threat, right?
I think humans are trusting in general, right? So it's easy to just click on things and then realize, oh, wait, maybe I shouldn't have done that.
It looked very real, right? And I think it's a good example of why training is important, because, you know, we're not in the days where it's very obvious and you get misspelled the emails and no, you know, this is not okay. I mean, I think those days are over. We're getting very targeted spelling. Yeah. You got it.
One of the email trends I see is when you click on the sender. So it'll look like I'll use CBS for example. So you'll think that the email is coming from CBS, but then when you click the actual sender's address, it comes out to like some crazy
weird thing.
letters. Yeah. But I'm seeing that more and more often in my own email as well. I also change my passwords for that reason, because I feel like it's so easy for them to get access.
Well, it's a good byproduct of the security awareness training in a corporate setting, is that it kind of carries over to the personal side of things. Like, so these people are going to be better protected at home just from going through it at work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We talked about training a little bit last time. Password keeper is another one that sort of crosses over from personal to business. It's a great way to make sure, you know, that your passwords are complex enough and that they're changing at the right interval. You know, LastPass is one that we have a relationship with that's pretty common on both sides, you know, personal and commercial. We definitely recommend, you know, a tool like that. I think OneLogon is another one, right? So all of this stuff is very interesting. I hate kind of just throwing product out here. I know that's a topic of our conversation, so I'm trying to make sure that we have something that's Googleable. What we really focus on is kind of taking all of this stuff away, you know, working with the folks that we are fortunate enough to work with to kind of cut through all that, right? Understand my business. Here are all these tools that are an opportunity, but here's sort of what we recommend, right? Based on budget, based on risk, based on compliance. Let's build a plan and let's get there over the course of a couple of years, and let us sort of decipher the LastPass versus OneLogon versus blah 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 blah.
Would you guys say that's probably one of the biggest benefits with working with you guys as well? Because for, again, people that have, you know, a smaller amount of employees, or smaller companies in general that don't have the resources, that feel, you know, this overwhelming sensation when it's like, oh, we have to do all of this on our own. I think one of the biggest benefits is that, you know, you guys are the experts. So coming in, you can take that load off their shoulders and kind of help them walk through the process, but also be, you know, kind of like the safety net where it's like, you know, we're working with these companies. You know, they know the subject matter, they can help us out. It doesn't fall just directly on that small business.
That's right. And today, I mean, workforce is such a big topic. It's difficult for a lot of folks to you know, retain talent, to recruit talent, and you know, and to compound that with something that's foreign to a business makes it even more difficult, right? There's a lot of us IT cowboys out there that you know can talk a big game, but you know, to get a resource that's really going to help you, you know, to this end and be strategic and help you with the simple service stuff, the caring and feeding, you know, that's really what we focus on. And it's a soup to nuts can be a really, it's typically, a third of the cost of what a full-time in-house resource would cost, and we can offer really kind of a full suite, the mopping, the cleaning, the strategic piece, and obviously very focused on the cybersecurity and compliance element that a lot of small manufacturing is feeling right now.
That brings us back to weapons, because this is the weapons discussion, right?
The ninja.
Yeah. So just in general terms, what are some of the types of solutions that end up going into place when it comes to the CMMC compliance in a typical environment?
We have a really cool one. One of our, we have quite a few. We have a really cool one in a company called, Prevail, that is a very simple, small business focused way to protect controlled unclassified information, right? And that's a huge topic for folks that are pushing for level 3 compliance. Is what the heck am I going to do with my Office 365 suite? I know everybody tells me it's not compliant. Prevail is a great alternative for that plugs hand in hand with Office 365, gives us a place to store CUI while maintaining that simple workflow within Microsoft Outlook. So, and I believe they're Massachusetts native with us. So, keeping it local. We have a great relationship with Prevail, and we love the solution as a weapon to sort of deal, with that sort of compliance. Another one that we work with, Blackpoint, is like super cool. We geek out on Blackpoint. So maybe Pete could talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Blackpoint is MDR, so managed detection and response, so which is huge in CMMC compliance because it wraps in the managed detection and response plus some SIM capabilities, which is log aggregation, collecting all those logs from your firewalls and your down to your workstations, all systems. So it encompasses all that, gather those logs for a centralized place to review them, but also alert on them, so that the Blackpoint Cyber is able to filter through those logs and see if something stands out as odd, that an elevated account was utilized to access certain systems in odd hours. I mean, it can get that granular. Also has, like, it's using technology to just beyond your virus and scanning technology to detect things like what we talked about earlier, the lateral spread. It's built in with a SOC capability, so Security Operations Center. So that operates 24/7. So if something gets alerted up to the SOC and the SOC's like, oh, we need to involve our MSP, they then contact us or whoever they're working with, but to act on that. So, hey, this is something we might need boots on the ground to get into these systems and lock this down. They also have some of that capability built in. So if they have their agent on a server and they feel there's a threat, they have some capability to lock that down before we're alerted and might be able to take action on that.
And this tool is one that helped us, get some assurance that in that example we gave before, that there was no lateral spread, right? So having the combination of this technology really helped us. When we're going through our CyberStrong assessments and we're measuring against level 3 compliance, we're often asked, what is the biggest difference between level 1, 2, and 3, right? I can say that this sort of tool, right, and this process is one of the larger pieces to get you from 2 to 3. Is that right, Pete?
That's correct.
Yep. So having a tool that is monitoring multiple threat vectors, right? It's giving and logging this information in a way that can be reproduced, right, to a C3PAO auditor, and also is monitored with a human, right? So someone who 24/7 is looking through this stuff and escalating real threat.
And protects, one of the big ones is just the protection of that audit and logging data. So level 2 and 3 really hit on that. Is okay, so if you're only logging on a desktop or server and that server goes down, but it was possibly compromised for the reason that it crashed. How are we going to find additional information out on that? So this log data is protected, centralized, protected, gives you an area so that you can start to track back. So if you need to do more forensic digging into the situation itself.
So geeky, I love it.
That does sound cool. Automated, like automated countermeasures, right?
Oh yeah.
Gonna fight fire with fire.
That's
You
awesome.
got it. So I'm sure we must have prompted some questions. At least I hope so. Either that or we lost the entire audience.
So I am looking on Facebook. I don't have any on Facebook. Mike, did any come in through the chat on Zoom?
Nothing has come in through Q&A or chat.
Wow.
It's too much. You know, this stuff, I get it. I get it. You know, this happens to me at parties all the time. We'll walk in, we'll start talking about managed detection and response. Next thing I
You'll walk
know,
away.
I'm having a beer by myself. Yeah.
Well, what about turning it? So if you guys could pick, you know, one of the most frequent questions that you do get asked, whether it's from people who don't know a lot about cybersecurity or vice versa, what would you say is one of the most frequent questions that's proposed to you guys?
It's tough. We get a lot. You know, it's definitely a lot of you know, where do you start, right? You know, so we hear all this stuff. Thank you for scaring us thoroughly. I don't understand anything that you've talked about, but you know, where do we start? I mean, how do I take a first step in this, you know, monumental, you know, endeavor?
And really, I mean, the nice thing is CMMC and the DFARS have instruction manuals, right? They're long, they're not all that clear, but that's the kind of thing that the CyberStrong platform manages, and then you just go through each item one at a time and start putting it to bed, right? And it also prompts you to A, consider every possible risk and threat, and B, put countermeasures in place when applicable.
Yeah, it's a beast, right? How many questions are in the CMMC assessment, Pete?
130 for level 3. So
right. It's a beast. One of the things we try to do as we're working through the CyberStrong platform is try to, you know, make English out of the, say, you know, 50 or 70 controls you're out of compliance with, right? You know, for some folks, it's better to kind of go one by one and build to compliance. For others, it's like, okay, just give me the 10 projects and how much do I have to spend, right? It just get me to the end. And so starting with that assessment allows us to help with some of that. It's not something we can just do, right? Right on the cuff. Obviously, we have some experience, so there's some rough estimate based on size of business, but you really need to go through that assessment. Get to understand that business a little bit more, get to understand where the real deficiencies are, and then we can bucketize them into English, right? We can say, hey, you know, here's 5 to 10, you know, it's 30 to 50,000 that we have to spread, or that we can spread over 3 years. You know, if that makes sense for your business, we don't need to be compliant now. We need to drive towards it in 3 years. Here's a 3-year plan on how we can potentially get there. Understanding that over the course of these 3 years, we may have to massage these priorities, and we may have to add to them. That's really the whole maturity around the practice that needs to be built, and where we can add a lot of value.
Right, it's got to be continuous.
You got it.
And that's what the DoD is looking for.
That is one of the major concerns, John, that you mentioned, is, you know, small clients and small companies that we work with. This is overwhelming. We don't have a giant IT department. We don't have the IT infrastructure. That's where partnering with professionals like you folks, Derek, Pete, and John, I mean, that's where you can get the benefit from using Mass MEP and using Cybersaint and Synagex. We understand that that most small companies don't have that ability to tackle these things, but this is really what you need to keep your business going and up running.
Yeah,
and one less thing to worry about.
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest thing about, you know, just for our solution, you know, we're not going to make it too overwhelming as other solutions might. We want to keep it as simplified, easy to go through as possible. And then, with us already trying to make it as easy as possible for you guys, then you have John and Pete on top of that to also hold your hand. So, it's a process that's, a lot of people are going to have to do eventually. And, we want to be there and kind of hold your hand along the way to make sure you're doing it correctly and actually going through it.
That's right. Put some ninjas out there.
You love the shirts.
I mean, we had them made, so I got to plug them a little bit.
Right.
I need to get mine. I need to find out where that went.
That's right. It got lost in the mail.
I think it got shipped to the office. I have to go in there and grab it.
That's awesome.
Hopefully the
We
door's
do
locked.
have a couple of minutes left at the end of this, and I just want to make sure that Mike also has time to go over, a brief overview of just what the Express Grant is, because it did start on July 1st. I know we're a little bit into it, but there's just so many opportunities that come from it. So I just wanted to make sure, unless you guys had any other points that you want to throw in there before we throw it back over to Mike.
No, that's it. That's a huge one. I mean, we talked about first step, working with Mass MEP and this Express Grant is a great opportunity. If you don't know about it, I mean, this is kind of to me, the punchline of the whole thing, right? I mean, we could do it mostly for free, right? That initial assessment, free. But Mike, I think, walking through that, if I were going to walk out of anything in this meeting, aside from all the geekiness, this would be it.
Well, thank you.
Before you go, we've got a question from Bob Sylvester. With the rise of ransomware and extortion techniques, where do you see the evolution of these threats heading in the next few years? Pete, John?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take a stab. That's an interesting, a good question, right? So if we think about ransomware, ransomware is, from a technical perspective, a legitimate technical thing that can be done within an environment. What it's doing is it's encrypting information within an environment. But the way that the threat typically gets in is through the human layer. It's somebody who has the permissions within an organization and has access to information that has initiated an encryption request in the environment, but doesn't have the key to unlock the encryption, right? So if I'm going to boil down what ransomware is, that's kind of what it is. I mean, it's a stab in the dark, right, as far as what the future of that is. But what we find is that more often than not, the human element is the path of sort of entry, the easiest path in entry. We can fool a human a lot easier than we can a machine that has hard and fast rules. So I think the evolution of that would be a bit more in my opinion of exploiting sort of that human element to do different things and gain access to different pieces of information in different ways. Social engineering, Facebook, phone calls, knocking on doors, all these things are attack vectors. And what you'll see on the defense side, and it's already kind of out there a little bit, is more of this zero trust model, right? Which is, even if you're a human that has access to something, we're going to put toll gates within the environment to stop a threat like that from occurring.
Right.
So hopefully, that answers the question. But
don't assume Derek belongs in the building.
Exactly. So if Derek makes an awful mistake, he still doesn't have access.
If he's got a clipboard in his hand, he's walking fast with his head down.
I got my hard helmet on and everything.
Right. Yeah. I think with that Prevail encryption system is pretty much a zero trust kind of tool. And there's a number of things out there, obviously, but
yeah. Anytime you want to talk about this stuff, I'm always game. We could go another hour.
Yeah. I mean, there was a Coughlin company that's just got a ransomware attack a week or two ago in Worcester.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They luckily they had good and recent backups, so they're able to just get back up and running and restore from their backups, and it wasn't as big an issue as it could have been. But and that's another, a lot of companies have some semblance of business continuity plan in place, and they have some semblance of backup and recovery system. But the weakness there a lot of times is people will just make backups all the time, and they assume that they'll be ready for them when they ever needed them, but they don't test the backups to see if they can restore from them and actually have them work.
And if you think about that, hopefully that didn't happen in this case. A backup is a reactive measure, meaning, we'll have business resumed, which is wonderful, right? But, in a lot of cases with this ransomware, data is exfiltrated, right? So we're back to business, but now somebody has a piece of a puzzle that from a national defense perspective, maybe they shouldn't have.
Yeah. And that's why CMMC is happening, because nobody's breaking into Lockheed or Raytheon and downloading entire missile and warfighter plane drawings and things like that. They're getting into the hundreds of thousands of small manufacturers in the supply chain and getting pieces of those those weapons and then putting them all together.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's a great question.
Yes, thank you for the question. As this slide says, the Workforce Training Fund is for businesses of all sizes through the state of Massachusetts. A portion of your unemployment tax goes into this Workforce Training Fund, so it is being funded by you. Anyway, the change this year, beginning July 1st, typically in the past, it was a 50% reimbursement for all companies with the Express program. Beginning July 1st, for companies less than 100 employees, it's now 100% reimbursement. So this whole program, working with Pete, John, and Derek and that team, is 100% reimbursed by this. It's a great way to get your IT safe, get all of your property safe, and go forward from there. The application for the Express grant is honestly a 15 to 20-minute process. It's fully online. I'd be glad to help anybody go through it. I've helped several companies, and they've come back and like, you were right. It's literally 15 minutes. It took us no time at all. Once we had the information, it was plug and play. Mass MEP would be glad to help you. I personally would be glad to help you, as well as Rich and Emma. And we look forward to working with all of you. Thank everyone for attending. Thank you, folks, our Facebook friends, for watching. We look forward to hearing from you soon in the future.
And just a little add-in for everyone on this slide that's displayed, those QR codes.
QR codes. Cool.
Yes. So if you do scan them, it'll bring you up to a draft email preset to whoever's email that you are scanning the QR code of. But for those of you that aren't comfortable with QR codes, totally understandable. I did share everyone's emails in the chat. So you guys are more than welcome to copy those, reach out, questions, concerns. I know there weren't too many questions today. Once you digest all the information that was shared, feel free to reach out to any of us. So again, I also wanted to thank you guys just for joining us today. Another huge thank you to our panelists. I think there was, numerous takeaways from today, and I think it's very important that we continue to make, everyone aware of the potential threats that could come from cybersecurity now that we lean on technology so heavily. So again, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.